Want to put it up on the screen for you.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening. The time is now 6:30 p.m. I'm Select Board Chair Tim Toth. We're going to be opening a joint Select Board Advisory Committee weeknight budget presentations. Joining us tonight is the Montechusett Technical Crew, Thomas Brown, Tom, the Superintendent, Amy Crockett, the Business Manager. Later this evening, John Martin from the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. I hope I said that correctly. And then last but not least, our NRSD a little bit later this evening. We do have a quorum present. At this time, I would like to call the Templeton Select Board to order. Time is 6:31.
At this time, I'd like to call the advisory committee to order at 6:31. And I'd also have a quorum.
Thank you for that. And if you'd all please rise, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Also joining us remotely is our town administrator, Adam LaMontagne. He's out there in the Zoom platform tonight. And we have the assistant town administrator, Holly Young, in the room with us. So without any further ado, Tom, would you like to come forward, take what, as we affectionately call, the hot seat, and let us know what you need presented on the slide.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Adam, if you have Mr. Martin's contact information, if you want to let him know to join back, or if he's having any difficulty, if you could work that with him.
Holly, I believe, has the email. Holly, would you mind just emailing him? Please?
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
So we'll start with just the information packet on Monty Tech there. So that's the one we'll go out with. I'm not sure how much I need to lead into the microphone or anything, but if you need me to,
It's the one that I don't have.
Yeah, we didn't send.
Yeah, I've got that one and that one. So,
Yep.
All right.
All right. Sorry about that, but you got all three. All right, we'll go through this quick because I realize the focus here is the budget, but we do want to make sure that we highlight a couple things that's happening at Monty Tech. One in particular is a big partnership with Narragansett that we want to make sure that we highlight. But focusing on some of the budgetary issues. So if you just flip over there to the first page, we want to make sure that we're assuring all our towns and communities that Monty Tech is going beyond the Chapter 70, Chapter 74 money to do the things that we need to do at Monty Tech. So a couple quick examples. The first issue is we were or a major corporation reached out to us last spring saying, hey, listen, we're trying to start an educational foundation. We heard that Monty Tech has a foundation. How does a foundation work? How do you get schools to apply? How do you identify? So we took them through the process of how we do applications and everything else for the foundation. And they said, well, maybe you could do a demo and show us how that works. So we put together a demonstration, an offer, a bid. We put it in so they could take a look at it. And the next thing you know, they reached back out to us and said, all right, we're going to grant you the $370,000 that you didn't even realize you were really applying for. And they gave us that as an anonymous donation. Using that donation, we were able to get some planers, some saws for our house carpentry program. But more importantly, what we're going to be doing is replacing a very old spray booth in our auto body shop. Again, that's all through that anonymous donation, so it's not local funds at all. We continue to go for grants. I'll get to a summary page in a second, but this again is just an example. We gave you a vocational one looking at academics. Mass Life Science is a grant that comes out pretty regularly. We apply for it all the time. This particular situation, we applied knowing that we had formed a partnership with Fitchburg State for anatomy and physiology courses. So our students, if they pass the class, would get college credit. That saves them $1,900 in tuition at Fitchburg State. But also from that grant to supplement and support that program, we had $109,000, about $110,000 from the Mass Life Science grant. And what that allowed us to buy in the bottom right corner, it's a small picture there, but it's called an animatage table. And what that literally is a virtual cadaver, where someone who donated their body to medical science, it literally lays it out almost in a 3D model. So the instructors in our health occupations program, our instructor in our Project Lead the Way health class can literally work through the entire body. They can see how the body flows and everything. Students, as someone else said last time, there's no more dissecting frogs. It's now looking at things in a virtual environment. And the grant allowed us to do that. So if you go to the next page, you'll see just this year alone, Monty Tech has received $3.7 million in grants. So again, we're not just trying to rely on local funds and the state funds and everything else. A couple other things we do with grants. We did get a skills capital grant. We were able to use that money to renovate the bottom left corner. You'll see is our dental assisting program. Those are all brand new chairs in the cabinetry and everything else. Cabinetry all done by our house carpentry instructors and with student help. We were able to completely redo our auto technology tool crib using those funds. And then the other one we just showed is really not necessarily money we got or that we improved our, a program, but our school store, it looked pretty bad. It was a mess. It hadn't been used. Nobody was buying anything. And as you can see, again, we have brought in our house carpenter kids, our electrical kids. We totally did our school store. And it's been a hit. We had our open house last week and in one night they made about $1,600, I think, of selling materials. So good stuff. We continue and earlier this year, I met with Adam, I met with him at the school, and I've been really pushing and saying, listen, any community project that you might think, hey, this might be something that Monty Tech students can do, please reach out to me, reach out to Ryan Regi, our vocational director. There's some examples here. I had met with the first town that I met with was Barry, just as an example. Ms. Sizer, their town administrator, mentioned that they had a fire station that they want to install some insulation. We set it up in about 2 or 3 weeks. The kids went in and they did all the work. So please, as you're looking at your capital projects, keep Monty Tech in mind. We want to try to help.
We do.
I know you do. Very quickly, because I want to get to Tammy. One of the things I've been really trying to do is there's a very improper rumor or fib going around that 80% of the kids who go to Monty Tech are going on to college, and it's no one goes into the trade anymore. And it's just not the case. This is a quick pie chart that shows what happened with just our last graduating class, the class of 2022. And if you add the kids going on to 2-year college and 4-year college, it basically comes down to 49%, and you have 45% who went into the workforce. It's basically an even split. And if you flip to the next page, you'll see that what really happens if you break it down by shop, by program, the kids who are in, like, for instance, the construction trades, when you look there and you see what are those kids doing? Electrical, 17 of their 21 kids went right into the workforce. House carpentry, 10 of their 13 kids went right into the workforce. Where you expect them to go to the workforce, they're going into the workforce. However, you look at all our health programs, those folks, the kids in health occupations, when they graduate, they can go work as a CNA, which is great. The money's nothing, as we all know. So if they really want to be getting paid a good salary, they need to go on to college. So you'll see in the health occupations group or in the health programs there, they're going on to college. So the thing that we're out here trying to remind everybody is the old school version of the just construction trade vocational school is long gone. All right. There's a lot of programs where kids do need to go on to college. So that continue on the packet, I'll flip to the next couple of slides very quickly. That's why we work with Fitchburg State. We try to make sure kids are prepared for college. There's an example there of some of the companies that we visited with recently on page 12. Where the kids went in and toured and were able to meet with the company and talk about not just co-op positions, but perhaps permanent positions. On slide 13, if you look, co-op is going huge. There's so many kids out on co-op, all right, 176 students currently out on co-op. Basically, half our senior class is practically out on co-op right now. So we're really pleased. Companies are opening up. That's going great. I wanted to make sure you saw some of the companies that we're working with to get this done. It's going great. So last, this program that I wanted to talk about. The biggest issue that we have at Monty Tech is we don't have enough space. This past year, the freshman class, we had 370 spots, 850 kids applied for those 370 spots. And sending home all those, sorry, you don't get accepted letters are horrible. We hate doing that. So when I became superintendent, I was saying to my admin team and Tammy being part of that, what can we do to find that we can get access for more students? And what we decided to talk about is we can't do it necessarily in our own building. Maybe we go find a building and we lease that building. And that's what we've done. So the building is 270 Westminster Street. It's about a mile down the road towards Fitchburg from where Monty Tech is located. And we reached out to 3 of our sending districts, Fitchburg, Gardner, and Narragansett, which obviously affects the folks here. We met with them and we said, listen, there's this program called After Dark programs. And what the After Dark programs are is you have a great vocational school where the kids are working during the day, but at the end of the day, there's nothing going on. I mean, we have continuing education, but the shops aren't all being used. Why not use those spaces? So we approached these districts. We had talked to them. The 3 superintendents, Mr. Cassavant, Mr. Jocola, and Mr. Pellegrino were willing to take a risk. To do something was very different. We talked to them and we said, listen, you're telling us that you have kids who want to do these programs, but they can't do it after school. They have to work they have to work an after school job for their family. They're doing sports, they're doing theater. What if we did it during the school day? And that's what we're doing. So we're going to do an After Dark program, but we're doing it during the day. And we're using this facility so we don't have to mess with our regular day programs. They're not missing out on anything. They're doing all their work, but we're going to do this down the road. In order to do it, if you flip to page 21, we applied for a lab modernization grant, 1.9 million. It's the largest grant that Monty Tech has ever received. This is going to allow us to renovate that warehouse space and turn it into 3 vocational programs. We're going to start off with house carpentry and electrical. The 3rd program will eventually be plumbing. Our own students will do all the renovations to the warehouse. We'll build the wall separations. We'll be building a classroom. All that work, all the electrical work will be done by our students and our instructors. 30% of that 1.9 million could be used directly for those renovations. The rest of it will buy all the equipment and tools for all that. So again, using grants to the best of our ability. We received that grant. There's 2 additional grants that will go with that. One is a planning grant, was just to help support folks who are putting together the concept of how we were going to do this for, again, all districts. And then another grant we'll apply for just before we open the program. We're looking to open the program fall of 2024. We'll do all the renovations this year. Next spring, we'll open it up to the adult program at night, the CTI program at night. And then in the fall, we'll start off. It's for juniors and seniors. So they're only going to be in the program for 2 years. But it'll be 84 total students between the 3 districts that will get the training, again, in house carpentry and electrical. They won't get all the workforce related certifications that our regular day students do, because they're just not going to be there the entire time. But they'll come out with their OSHA, their 10-hour OSHA card. We hope that HotWorks gets done in-house carpentry. We hope we set up the electrical kids to transition right into that adult workforce program, CTI, because if you know anything about electrical, it's all about hours. It's how many hours you've gone through and everything else. So they will have to, but even our kids, when they graduate, still need additional hours in order to be fully ready to go into the program. So there's a timeline there. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but the key thing is just last Friday, we submitted the application, we submitted the MOUs. We truly think this is going to be a revolutionary program that other districts are going to want to copy. The last couple slides, and again, I'm not going to go through everything, so get to Tammy. I want to make sure everybody understands, and we're making sure all the towns know, we are not using Chapter 70 money to fund this. All right, so none of the local money, because we have, as you know, 18 towns, 15 other towns don't get to participate in this program. We hope to expand it someday and hopefully do that. But so what we're going to be using, we got the lease, we got the rent and everything else. The key things we will use is we will use the Chapter 74 money. Any student who is in a Chapter 74 program, additional funds, and Tammy's going to go through all this in a second on the budget, come with that student in that program. So instead of those funds, because those students aren't really doing the work in those individual districts, they'll send that additional $5,000-$6,000 to Monty Tech. And that's one of the things we'll use to fund. That's wherever you see student assessments, that's what that's all about. We'll use the CTI, the adult for workforce. A lot of that brings materials that you can purchase that will, again, support our students. The other thing is the Perkins money, Perkins grant money. from federal government. Again, that comes with all the Chapter 74 students. So no local funds will be being used to finance all this program and everything else. So we're very excited about that. Again, I really want to thank Dr. Cassavant, Mr. Pellegrino, Mr. Jokola, because they're taking a risk to jump into this program. But we think we're going to be able to serve a lot of kids who desperately want to get into vocational training that we just don't have the room for. So we're very excited about it. I'm sorry it took too long, but I'll turn it over to Tammy. I don't know if there's any quick questions or anything.
Well, thank you for that, and congratulations on receiving those grants.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you to Katie Whitaker, who's our grant writer. So she helped out a whole lot.
Okay, so I'm going to transition to the PowerPoint, which is preliminary budget. You could probably do my presentation by now. I think most of you have seen it 100 times. Always feel free, come over if you like. I asked Tom to do it, but he said no. So we do our budget based on the governor's numbers, as most everybody else does. So I like to start out the presentation with what happened at the state level. So for the FY24 Chapter 70 funds, they're coming in at about an increase of 586 million over the current year. They also made a commitment. Yes, perfect. They also made a commitment to fund the Student Opportunity Act. So that was benefits. So they're doing some increases to certain foundation budget rates because they weren't keeping up with actual spending. And this is the third year of implementation into that. So again, you can see the list of where they're doing some increases to funding. The next slide, which I'm glad you have up there because mine is cut off a little bit. The next slide talks about Monty Tech's actual foundation budget. So all the categories are going down the left side, and the rates, and the grade levels, excuse me, are going across the top. So each grade level, and I apologize, it looks like the PowerPoint that was photocopied, the right side got cut off a little bit. So hopefully if you have it electronically, like I'm looking at now. So each grade level, the rates change because the theory is it's costs more to educate students as they get higher in grade levels. Vocational education, which is row 7, column 7, is the highest number. It's the highest education cost. And as you can see, which at least you can see in this one, we have all of our students are vocational students. Our foundation enrollment is 1,465. Now, again, that's the students that attend Monty Tech. That's the students that reside in our area towns that go to other districts, that's school choice out. And we also have a practical nurse program that is Chapter 74 certified as well. If you look into your regular budget book, you will also see this information in full. The next rows, 8 through 13, are the same students. It's like a duplicative count, but they give you extra money. And it's for the students that they also consider that you need more money to educate, special education, ELs, and low income. So you can see row 8, column 8, we have way more than 72 special ed students in district. That is an assumed percentage, and they do that for every district. So they take, which is down here, 4%, 4.5%. That's where they come up with the 72, and they give you some additional money above base. Again, special ed out of district, if we don't have any in our accounts because you have to come to Monty Tech, be a Monty Tech student. Then you have your ELs. We have our ELs, 10 in column 12. So we have 10, you get additional money there. And then column 13 is your low income. And that's the students that the state recognizes receiving benefits. So we get an additional bump above base for that. They take all those numbers and they come up with your total to row 14. I keep saying rows, excuse me, column 14. and they come up with a total. So our total is 29,486,021. That is our foundation enrollment, also called net school spending, and I'll use those interchangeably. Dividing that out by the number of pupils we have at Monty Tech, that's 20,127 per pupil of our required spending based on the state's numbers.
Right.
The next slide shows the breakdown of our chapter 70. So I like to look at the right side where it says comparison to FY23. You'll see that our foundation enrollment for FY23, which is the current year, is 1467. FY24 is 1465, as I just discussed. We just saw how the foundation budget was calculated, all those rates. That's the 29,486,021. And that's a $1.6 million increase for us, or 5.55%. That becomes very important because we are 0.5% above our required spending. So literally our budget goes with what the state basically tells us we have to spend. The next line is the required district contribution. That's from all our communities. The state does a calculation for each community. And in this case, they came up with the total for 18 communities, 11,167,317. So the required minimum contribution is an increase, 451,363, or 4.21%. They literally take foundation budget, subtract out what the required contribution is from the communities to come up with our chapter 70 state aid. So you can see what they've calculated. We're getting 18,318,704, or approximately 1.1 million increase, or 6.38% increase. The next slide is the budget summary. So it kind of puts those two components together. It takes, sorry, I'm just pulling my piece up. It takes our foundation budget or net school spending number of 29,486,021, as I just told you how that was calculated. Our transportation number, 2,399,080, that's our contractual contracts with our buses that bring our kids back and forth to school, plus our special ed transportation. So you can see that was a 3.6% increase. We have 30 buses that pick up our students. Our above net school spending in this budget, 150,000. Again, as I said, that's 0.5% above. Our capital budget, which I'll talk to in a couple minutes, is 490,000, and our vehicles are 10,000. We try to keep our total capital budget within about the 500,000 per year mark. So you can see it's just a $15,000 increase between those two lines. That comes up to our total gross budget of 32,535,101. I want to point out that that's a 5.64% increase, but as you can see above, it's mostly all dictated by our required spending increase by the state, which is 5.55%. The next line, you can see they would take out the chapter 70, as I showed you on the previous slide, and it comes up to the required minimum contributions, 11,167,317. The next section is our transportation and other. That is just from above our contracted transportation, plus our above net school spending. The two of those added comes to the 2,549,080. We subtract out what our estimated transportation aid is. That's from the cherry sheets from the governor's projections, 1.7 million in this case. We also have a regional transportation reimbursement fund. So what happens is in one fiscal year, if we get additional transportation money above what we budgeted for, the school committee will vote for a figure of that, an amount from that, to go into our transportation revolving fund. We use it the following fiscal year to offset assessments for transportation to our communities. So that's where that funding is coming from. At the moment, because we don't know where our final FY23 numbers are, we budget conservatively out of this, into that. And we're also using excess and deficiency for this line of 250,000. From the capital budget, as you'll see below, we're using another 200,000 from E&D to offset assessments. So that comes to 450,000. And I show you at the bottom of this that our E&D balance that was certified by the Department of Revenue is 1,006,541, or 3.1%. And as you know, a regional school district is allowed to have up to 5%. So we're not anywhere near that cap, and we're projecting to use almost half to help offset assessments. That brings us to the final total assessment for all our communities of 11,991,397. That's a 5.63% increase. Again, stays in line with the other numbers as I showed you. The next slide is where our spending is for the FY24 budget by function. So I'm going to go through the large changes. This budget funds our COLA and column movements for all our staff. It funds all of the staff. That's where you can see the largest increase in teaching salaries, and in that section. Also within that section, we have some large increases in the textbooks and instructional materials. The inflation on our consumables for our shop, as you know, for your own homes, businesses, grocery store, we buy food, we buy lumber, we buy copper, we buy wire, we use welding gases, all those things. We're looking at, in some shops, upwards of 20% increases to their consumables alone. We also have a couple of capital instructional purchases in there. One of them, the largest actually, being for our automotive program. It's $55,000, and it's going to be a hybrid electric vehicle trainer, because we got to keep up with the times, and we're seeing all of these types of vehicles that need to be serviced. So we need to buy a trainer for that. Another large increase, or larger in the budget, again, is student transportation. And again, that's our contractual rates for our 30 buses for to and from school. Also, benefits, health insurance and other insurances. I don't think I've come here for the last 10 years and not said the word benefits increase. We're at a 6% increase this year, but which is great, because some years we've seen double-digit increases. So to try to keep it at 6%, we're okay with that. So that's where we're seeing the larger increases that make up this budget. The next slide is the enrollment. And this is a list, this is the foundation enrollment to the left of all our towns. So you can see Templeton, 83, which is a decrease in foundation enrollment of 4 students. The next column over is the school attending children number. The school attending children number is given to us by your superintendent of schools office. It's the students in grades 1 through 12 or that are eligible to be. No kindergarten, because that wasn't when the district agreement was signed, there wasn't kindergarten. Those numbers, that percentage becomes the basis for your capital apportionment as well as your quota. So for Templeton, you have 1,122 pupils. On the next slide, it shows you how that breaks out to the percentage. So you have 4.43%. So Templeton represents 4.43% of our district's school attending children. So that's the basis for your capital piece of your assessment, as well as the school committee just established the freshman quota for this coming freshman class of 365.
That is correct.
So Templeton's quota will represent 4.43% of that class. The other percentage, Templeton has 83 students, and you can see that you represent 5.67%. That's of operating costs. That's Templeton's enrollment based on our foundation enrollment for the school. So that's the basis for your operating assessment component. The next slide is a breakdown of, again, all our towns, the FY23 foundation enrollment, and the required minimum contributions as calculated by the state. So you can see the change. Again, change of 2 students, increase to all of our communities, 451,363. And for Templeton, you have a decrease of 4 students, and the required minimum contribution decreases by 25,481. Again, that's in your budget as determined by the state. The next slide, which I'm going to have to rely on that one. The next slide shows how Templeton's assessment required minimum is calculated. So on the left side, it shows you it's based on your equalized property valuation of 2022. You can see the number. The uniform property percentage is the percentage that the state uses for every community. They calculated what percentage they needed to use. What they do is they want half of the required contribution monies to come from property values, the other half to come from income in the state level. So they have to take total state numbers for both of these, come up with a dollar figure, and that's how they come up with these percentages. So the 0.3534% is used for every community, no matter who you are. So they take your equalized valuation times the property percentage, and you come up with your local effort from what property wealth. That's the 3,157,572. The next rows 4 through 6 deal with the 2020 income. They take the income for the town residents, they multiply that by the uniform income percentage, 1.5329, and they come up with what they calculate could be Templeton's effort from income, 3,892,973. They add those two together and they come up with the combined effort yield. That means how much does the state think Templeton can pay towards its schools? And in this case, they've come up with 7,050,544. The next row, 8, is the foundation budgets. That's the foundation budgets for the Templeton's piece of all the school districts you belong to. So really, Monty Tech and Narragansett. And that's your piece of that. They take 82.5% of that. That's where the 14 million comes up.
Okay.
Every every town, no matter how wealthy, gets a little bit of Chapter 70, at least 17.5%. So they cap it at 82.5%. In this case, you can see that number would be 14 million. They take the lesser of 2. It's of what Templeton can afford to pay as to what the max would be. So the lesser of the 2 is the 7,050,544. So they put that in row 10. They come over to row 13. I would love your help with this one. Thank you. And they say, what was Templeton's required contribution in FY23 to its foundation budgets, and that's 5,565,869. They take the municipal revenue growth factor. This is determined by the Department of Revenue. It's they factor in your levy limits, your potential growth. Again, that's calculated by the Department of Revenue. So for Templeton, they've calculated 4%. That is a different number for every community based on Department of Revenue. So they take that and they multiply it by what you're paying this year. So in this case, they come up with row 15 of 5,788,504. Then they look at that number and say, okay, this is what Templeton will pay for FY24. But it's lower than what we said they can afford to pay over in the other column, 7,050,544. That's where it comes up to row 21. They're saying, oh, there's a shortfall between what they will pay, Templeton will pay, and what we think they can afford to pay of 1,262,040. The shortfall percentage in this case is 7.04%. So you can see below that, if the shortfall is 2.5% to 7.5%, they're going to increase this year's required contribution by 1%. That's where the 55,659 comes into play. That is 1% of row 13 of what you're paying currently. They add the two, and that's where they come up with what your contribution will be this year of 5,844,161. The next slide shows how that gets allocated across to the school districts that you belong to. The top 1 through 4 is just the current year. Rows 5 through 9 is for FY24. So you can see your foundation enrollment numbers for Gansett is 1,139, and for Monty Tech it's 83. They take what, and then the other numbers is what is Templeton's representation of the foundation budget for each school district. Now for Monty Tech, and it works the same way with Narragansett, they take the 83 students times the 20,712 number I told you at the start for people.
Yep.
And that's how they come up with that foundation budget number. They say what percentage of the 100% is each school district. Monty Tech represents 9.33% of your total. So they take 9.33% of your required contribution for this year, which is up above row 5, and they multiply that out and they say Templeton's required contribution to Monty Tech for FY24 is 545,212. And you can see how it's calculated for Narragansett as well. So that's where the decrease of 25,481 comes into play. The next slide, I give you a snapshot of how your assessment and in what categories the changes are. So you can see in 24, we talked about your foundation budget at Monty Tech. We just saw how your required minimum contribution is calculated, 545,212. The transportation and operating assessment is your operating percentage, that 5.7% of our net operating piece, which was on the budget summary, which was our total transportation, less transportation aid, less E&D, less revolving to come up with the net number. Then we take that, multiply it out. So that's where your 29,692 comes into play. Your capital assessment, I showed you how that was calculated. You represent 4.4% of our capital. So that was our capital figure, less the E&D being used to it, to come up with Templeton's piece of 13,285. So that brings you to a proposed FY24 assessment, 588,189, which is a decrease of 15,346 from year to year. The next slide is just a snapshot of all our communities. So again, we do the same process for every town. I just went through Templeton's. So you can see how that calculated out. The last slide, which is just a comparison of the per pupil spending for vocational schools in the state, just to kind of show you where Monty Tech is in the pack. We're about 21,000 per pupil spending against the state. So looking at your list, I've sorted it from highest per pupil spending to lowest based on vocational schools, just to kind of give you a feel for where we are with our counterparts. And that is my presentation, and I apologize that some of your slides are cut off.
Sure, that's correct.
I've got them, so I can,
Yes.
send them out to everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yep.
Lots and lots of math calculations.
There won't be a quiz, don't worry.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure I could do your
Dr.
presentation, but
Cosaphan's giving you a quiz
each
later.
time I see it, I'm understanding more and more and more of the
Good,
pieces.
good.
Chair, I might ask a question. I know you covered this, but what is the difference in the healthcare costs from last fiscal year to the fiscal year 24?
For dollars,
What percentage?
6% increase. Yep.
And the reason why I asked this, and it's kind of a twofold, but I know Dr. Gazavant projected that his percentage in healthcare might be above that amount, and then Adam has said that it might be below that amount. So I want to ask, how much is the 6%? Is that pretty typical?
No.
No,
So we're self-insured, so
you are.
we are,
To what extent?
we're fully self-insured.
For all the health insurance?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that was my next question. Is, I just, I've had this conversation with Adam and, the town of Templeton itself is not big enough to be self-insured, but I'm kind of surprised. I didn't realize you were self-insured. Has anybody ever talked about, the towns and the district, combining in some way to be self-insured?
Well, I think oftentimes in some regional settings, towns join in with their other departments and school district. Maybe form a joint venture. Would be probably difficult where we represent, like in our case, 18. But I know, I mean, I don't want to speak out of school, but I think the Ash West District, I think they may belong to the towns. The towns may be.
So for
with the
health
school.
insurance benefits, you are totally self-insured. Or
Yes.
are you self-insured with a very high deductible and then supplemental insurance?
No, we do carry insurance on our insurance, so to speak. So
Right.
we offer Blue Cross Blue Shield products, but Monty Tech pays all the claims. We're insured, so we have insurance on our insurance. So if I were to have a claim in 1 year over 50,000, we get that money back. But we pay insurance for that purpose.
So are you paying Blue Cross to administer?
We pay Blue Cross an administrative fee to allow us to use their discounts, providers, their billing systems and everything. But they monthly send us a bill for the,
I'm
The
gonna
claims.
stop the back and forth. Just Adam has his hand up and it's been up since we started this. Adam, you with us, sir?
I am. What I did in the budget book is I put the proposed fiscal year 24 assessment at 545,212, but it appears it's 588.
Yeah.
So I will have to adjust that. That will increase our deficit by roughly another $30,000. So what I'll do tomorrow is I'll adjust that page and get that ready for everybody on Saturday. So I'll have to find another $30,000 worth of cuts. That's all I got.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, because of the, I don't want to get a weed.
Yep.
I defer any further questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Those were great questions. Thank you. Anything else, Steve?
I'm good. Thank you. Good to see you again, Tammy.
You as well.
Nice to see
Thank
you,
you,
Tom.
everybody.
Great to see you guys.
Nice presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
You can follow along.
Holly, did Anne Marie or Dr. C, do they have, okay.
Mr. Martin, can you hear us, sir?
Next.
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. We're up to your presentation.
Well, I don't have much of a presentation, especially compared to what the Monty Tech folks just did. We had sent Mr. LaMontagne a letter at the beginning of February that a student from Baldwinville had applied at Norfolk Aggie. And we were alerting the town to the fact that there was a potential tuition bill that was going to be coming your way if indeed this student applied and was admitted to the Norfolk Aggie. He called me a couple of weeks ago and asked that I would explain what it would cost if this student came to the Aggie to you folks tonight. So here I am, essentially to field questions more than to present anything to you. I did tell Mr. LaMontagne that to this point, if I had to bet, this student will not be attending our school. A, it's an hour-and-a-half drive, and she has other options much closer to home. B, she has not attended any of our admissions sessions. We've had 6 admission days so far, and she has not attended one of them. And efforts to contact the family have been unsuccessful to this point. So we're not really sure what her motivation is or what her intent ultimately will be. But if I was betting man, I would say she's probably not coming our way.
Understood. Thank you for that. For the folks here in the room, under section 9, tab 9, the very back page is what we're discussing.
One enrollee for
One enrollee.
NCAHS, and that person is at the point.
Yep.
Not present.
It's not sounding that way yet.
It's not making good any business.
Okay, John, I appreciate the explaining that.
Sure. You know, most kids who apply to a voc tech school or an agricultural school like ours are really enthusiastic to be there and work hard to jump through the hoops that it would require for admittance. And this particular kid does not seem to be as enthusiastic as some others based on the lack of interaction we've had with the family so far.
Understood. And I see you folks are in Walpole, so it's not just a little hop, skip, and a jump from here, as you've indicated. It's
Yeah, I mean,
a substantial commute.
yeah, she could get to Monty Tech, to Essex Tech, or even to Smith Voc in a shorter amount of time than it would take to get to us.
Understood. I appreciate your candidness with that.
I can plant things remotely.
You can.
Sorry, that was
Team, any other questions?
a bad joke.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing none. Mr. Martin, thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And if the status changes in any way, I will be sure to let Mr. LaMontagne know.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Appreciate
Okay.
your time.
Thank you. Mr.
Appreciate
Martin.
you
Have a
joining
good night.
us.
Okay, have a good night. Good luck with your
Thank you, sir.
deliberations.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah, moving right along. That brings us up to our Narragansett Regional.
Thank you. Yeah. Does Narragansett Regional have a fight song? It does. Yes.
Will you sing it for us?
I almost want to play you on.
I would sing it, please, a little hoarse. And, but.
I will make it a point.
I'm going to embarrass him.
Press, this is a
Okay.
situation where you can
As
sing
it-
solo.
I'm sorry, I.
Has it been changed or is it the one that Maurice Case wrote many years ago?
I
you,
don't
Jim.
know if
Wow,
there's,
this-
the only version I know is the
Okay.
version that they sing today. So if there was a change, I wouldn't have known. I don't know that. That's a great trivia question.
My wife's biological father wrote it.
watching?
Okay, so is it still the original?
Oh,
I
really?
mean,
I don't know. I'm
I will
asking.
find that out. I thought
I'm
maybe you
intrigued.
knew.
I am intrigued.
I'm going to find that out.
So I'm just curious.
No, that's
I know
good.
there was
That's a
some
great
discussion. Did the song ever get changed? And I don't have that
And that's a
answer.
great question. I don't know that. Well,
And she'll be embarrassed because I asked.
well, that's great. Before you, because we've had this presentation now 3 or 4 times, and it does take about an hour to get through. Quite frankly, we did not do that. Just so you know, you have a copy in front of you of the presentation. And generally what we've always done is really just stick to the highlights and answer any questions and kind of really roll it back from there, quite frankly. So before we'll start off with the income sheet. I think that's probably the best way to start, and then between Anne Marie and I will try to answer any questions that you may have. Excuse me. So as this should look very familiar to you, the income sheet, we've produced the same sheet for certainly the last 6 years. I'm not quite sure prior to me, but I'm going to assume that we have. And obviously what jumps right off the page, and we'll talk about right off the bat, is what the increase looks like of $810,711 or 11.07% increase. And I can hear the capitalist laughing or coughing or something over to the side. But I want to talk about how we got there, quite frankly. And the budget, as we create it every year, we have multiple versions. And when I create a budget, it's there's a final defensive position, if I may, and a fallback. And generally, as we've said over the last couple of years, that position at its minimum has been to adequately staff the Templeton Elementary School. I certainly don't have to go back too far or in our memories. We certainly remember the school year 20, when we reduced the number of teachers at the Templeton Elementary School from 5 to 4. What went with that, if we remember back, is that there was a lot, right? There was a lot during those meetings, but we did take every one of those criticisms, what have you, and really looked at them in earnest. And one of those critiques was the fact that we took in so many school choice students. So at the time, FY20, we had 250 school choice students in this district. Okay, I'm gonna oscillate between 2 slides, but just to kind of give you, and we have this all detailed out. But one of the criticisms is that would we need so many teachers at the elementary level if in fact we didn't have so many school choice students? Which was fair enough. It was a fair question, because most of our school choice students really were at the elementary level. One, because if you are going to school choices your child into the district, in any district, you try to get in early, right? Kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, because you want your child as a school choice child to go right through the grades with the cohort of kids. It's harder to come in at the older levels, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Although we do see increases there. So we have often seen those numbers be particularly high at the elementary. The other reason was that Phillipston, at the time, Phillipston Elementary School, anywhere between 20 or 30% of the students at Phillipston, depending on what year you go back, were in fact school choice students, because we were trying to bolster the number of students per class, right? So, and again, we talked quite a bit about this. So what was the plan? The plan was, of course, then the teachers were reduced by the number from 5 to 4. we stopped taking school choice students in, especially at the elementary level, which was problematic because we have quite a bill that we put towards school choice. And we did that. Lo and behold, almost, 2 years to the day, a couple days ago on Monday, March 13th, COVID happens and poof, everything changes completely. ESSER funds come into play. And I'll just speed through that. But what ESSER 2 and 3 especially did is that they gave money to districts in order to do a lot of things. But one of them was to lower the class sizes. Because if you remember initially, we could only have so many students in a particular classroom per 6 foot, 3 foot increments, etc. You know, again, I don't want to bring back any trauma echoes, but that's in fact what it was about. And so the money ends this year, June 30th. June 30th, all that money goes away. That's how we've had 5 teachers at the elementary level, and others, but those have kind of fallen off as the monies have decreased over the past 3 years. So to that point, we started reducing the number of school choice students. What we didn't realize until last FY were the number of students that were moving into the district, residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw quite an increase last year. I think it was 47, if memory serves. And then we figured, well, maybe that was just a blip, although we saw the homes, we saw what was going on. And then, of course, this FY, we see another rough, these are foundational numbers. These are not butts and seats. These are how many school-age students, children live in the district, either Templeton or Phillipston. Almost to a student, we're at 600 and I'm going to go back. I'm going to oscillate back here real quick. But in essence, what we did is we went from the number of students we had with all those school choice students to almost exactly the same amount of students with residents included. Yes. So I was going to bring your attention to the high school enrollment slide, which shows the net increase of students from FY21. Looks like looking like this.
Yep.
So school choice did this, town went and did this.
Yeah.
And we stayed level at the end of the day.
Yep.
Exactly. The numbers in the classrooms actually, well, we talk a lot about the elementary. Because it's obviously a very important part of a child's career. But at the high school, oh, by the way, they were plus 50. It really kind of surprised us in a couple of different areas. We're plus 100 residents in this district, netting out to about 73 because we have kids who come and go and etc. But we had the same class sizes at the elementary as we did when we first started, which caused, of course, concern. Okay, so you've the last 6 years I've talked a lot about school choice. We have been on the right side of school choice since we've been here. We're very lucky. We have good teachers. We have good facilities. We have a lot of good things going for us. A lot of people want to come here. We turn far more kids away from school choice than we actually take in, even back in the day when we're at that 250 number, as I talked about. Right now, we are lucky because we don't have a lot of kids who want to leave here school choice. So we're on the positive side. We're on the positive side of school choice. We take in more money than we actually have to pay out. The problem is that number is starting to decrease, right? That number of the balance number is starting to decrease quite a bit. That is concerning. So that's on one end. Why? For some reason, several years ago, I think it was 2012, 2011, 2012, they put the insurance. You've heard me say this lots of times. The health insurance went into school choice for whatever reason. They did that. That financially is never a good thing to do, to put in a revolving account. So that's a number that it keeps going up, as we'll talk about soon enough. But ultimately, we're dependent on a certain amount of school choice number of kids coming in order to pay that bill. So I've hopped around a little bit because I've told this, we've presented this on several occasions. Here's the good news. Our enrolled students as of October 1st is 1,486. Enrolled students are butts and seats. Those are the kids that are actually sitting in seats right now. They haven't been that high since, well, FY20. when we had 250 school choice students at that time. We don't have 250 school choice students any longer.
Residents.
What's that?
We have residents.
We have residents now.
Yeah.
But the foundation enrollment is also important because that number is at 1,339 students. Remember, a foundation student is a school age student who lives in either Templeton or Phillipston, who goes to any public, thank you, I almost said Commonwealth, public school, anywhere in the state. Well, that number has increased substantially. So, and by the way, many of those kids come into our school. That's good news, right? We want our kids to come here. All right. So with that all being said, I just want to, again, you guys are flying through this. You've obviously reviewed it. You've heard me say, you've watched the presentations. What I presented before the school committee, as I do every single year, is a principal's request. We called it a fully staffed TES budget and a prioritizing the core teaching staff at TES, which was really the lowest. That was our default position, right? Our fallback position, which was just making sure that we had 5 elementary teachers at every grade. That was our default position. That is the number that Adam and I spoke about, as we do every single year. We talk about what number, here's my default position. We talk about what the minimum local contribution is. Of course, that went up quite a bit. We know that. We also know that Chapter 70 went up $1.6 million, which was...
See, that was on the high end of your original estimate.
Yes, it was 1.4, right? When we could do the numbers, sorta. We don't ever really count on those numbers until the state tells us what they are. We were shocked, obviously, with 1.4, and we were even equally more shocked when it came back at 1.6. So as I said in my presentation, I certainly don't want to sound like a petulant child who doesn't like the bike because of the color. $1 million year over year in Chapter 78 is an unbelievable amount of money. What they're complaining about right now in the state, that only certain amount of student opportunity act schools got most of the money. Narragansett's one of them. In terms, if you look at increases, it's not the cities. You take the cities out of it, especially the gateway cities. We absolutely receive far more money than a lot of the communities around us, if they were not gateway cities. Why is that? The increase to the number of kids who are literally moving into this district, primarily number of kids who have moved into Templeton, to be quite frank. And that's one. But two, the low income number has skyrocketed. When they made changes to the formula, everybody thought it was across the board. It really wasn't. When the Student Opportunity Act formula was changed, they focused in on special needs students, ELL students, and low income students. So the higher those number were almost like multipliers ultimately to the formula. Well, as Mark Abrams said when he did his financial report of the district, we almost hit the trifecta in a sense, and that's not necessarily a good thing. The number of kids increased substantially in terms of foundation, which was 1, and 2, our low income numbers have quite frankly skyrocketed. And with those multipliers, the way the formula is now, how it's now positioned, is that's how we received the monies that we did.
About half.
Yeah.
The low income number.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We went from 6.0.
Yeah. 654 out of
to 650. It's almost half. So we increased, ladies and gentlemen, 2 low income brackets. We jumped from 6 in FY19, right? And they changed the formula up to
breaks it
8.
out 45%. Yeah.
So that's a high number. So anyway,
36.
ultimately, that is what was presented at the meetings. The school committee, as you know, or if you don't know, they went with the principal's request number plus some, quite frankly, which, that is how the committee voted. And what I know about this group and what I know about presenting for the towns is that when we follow Monty Tech, by the way, I mean this, you're very lucky that you have the two best business managers probably within a radius of 50 miles. Okay, Monty Tech, she is phenomenal, and Anne Marie to my right. They are two of the very best. She knows I say that every year. So what we like about following Monty Tech is they do all the, they talk,
Dirty work for
they
you.
just, they do. I say, we don't even talk formula because you've done it all. But quite frankly, what's happened is that our needs are very great in every department in this town and in Phillipston. But again, you're right. I'm the superintendent. My department, right? My section is the school department. And that's what the school committee was focused on during the meeting. What I know about these towns that you've done your homework. I know to shut up. I know to ask questions. I know to wait for questions because that's generally what is coming.
When you, I did have one question, because when you were talking about the service tiers, you said that the school committee voted for the principal requests
Yes.
and then some.
Yes. So what they
What's
did.
the then some?
Okay, so basically what they did is they took out what they voted that night was they took out the kindergarten special education teacher and they added 3 paraprofessionals to the kindergarten classrooms. In my presentation, I was asked and I answered, we are probably the only district within, you pick a radius, that does not have paraprofessionals assigned to kindergarten classrooms. We have none.
So replace the kindergarten special ed teacher with paras.
In essence.
Okay, and I apologize, Mr. Toth, I should have asked that through.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that explanation.
Thank you. If there's one area that you'd like me to, again, knowing what I think is the best way is that whatever questions you may have on any of the information.
So really quick, through the chair, very quickly, clarification. So the principal request asked was 23,776,786.
That's yes.
But with that change, when I'm looking at the income sheet, the request is 23,789,786. I'm assuming that's the
Yes.
difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense then. Okay.
One of the factors, again, I'm going to go back to the elementary school for a minute. We were this year, we were labeled underperforming. When I say it didn't come as a surprise, again, COVID learning remotely or not learning remotely affected, we know our youngest kids the most. So you had kindergartners who came into school as a second grader, like for the very first time that they have walked into school. We've heard those stories. I've told them plenty of times. We're underperforming. So that means that we are below the 20th percentile in English language arts in this particular case. And so, well, we need to do something about that. The state generally makes you do something about that, whatever it may be. They've held off, quite frankly, given that so many districts were having difficulty just coming out of COVID. We have not been really tasked with when I say is anything additional. They've held off. They've been open about that. They didn't hold anybody. When I say super accountable, they just did not put any accountability on that. Generally, they make you do things with that. But they've always hold it over your head, obviously, to say that they're very willing and able to do that if need be. But they haven't, and have indicated that they'll wait till next year to see how schools dig out really from this deficit, quite frankly.
FY23, FY23, which one is which?
Oh,
Oh,
20.
24
is
to the
to
right.
the right.
Sorry.
Okay.
I missed that from the-
So it dropped, transportation dropped.
I was
Okay.
going to ask that as well. What's the reason transportation went down, out of curiosity?
The state has finally caught up with our actual expenses.
Oh.
Because during COVID, they assumed that no one was transporting kids and no one was going to school, but when we had our AB scenario, we actually did. So they had estimated on their cherry sheets numbers that were a lot lower than what we actually had. So it took a while for them to catch up to adjust the cherry sheet numbers. It basically, the past few years, it was more to you guys because the cherry sheet wasn't reflecting correctly. So that's why it finally is all working out the way it's supposed to this year.
So, another question that I'm gonna ask. So obviously from the previous presentation, we saw that, Monty Tech is using their E&D to supplement their budget to a certain extent. I see that, I'm assuming the 500 is the $500,000 is what you're using in E&D right now. This is off of the income sheet fiscal year 2024. You're using 500 in E&D.
Yes.
What's our E&D balance? And what's the percentage of?
After we use that 500,000, we'll have 193,000 left.
Ouch.
And in previous years, as we've been very open, we've used, when I say all of it, to be candid, we generally have used
Most of it.
most of it. We don't have a fallback. We talked a lot about this during the budget hearings, that what would happen, somebody said, what would happen if you had God forbid something happened. I don't even want to put that out there. Right. There is no fallback when you use that much E&D. Special education comes up a lot. Everyone knows about the 14% increase to out of district placements that was just literally bestowed on every district. All those that comes on the backs of the municipalities. Quite frankly, it is not uncommon, even for us, I've said it a lot, that we have students, by the way, and they need this level of care, but it's $250,000 for one student. And so when you start increasing things, that expense that is that expensive, although very needed, by 14%, you can understand that people are going to push back, and we have, and every agency has pushed back against the state on that, and they're looking for some type of relief. We just don't know what that'll be, if any, at this point.
The term I hate, unfunded state pending.
Mr. Chair. Good. I have a question. Easy one. Crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen next year?
We actually,
Is this a one-off? You think you're going to,
yeah. So
is your growth sustainable? And then what's going to happen next year?
We talk about this a lot.
I know.
And the question, I'm not going to answer a question with a question.
Based on all the conditions that
All the
you've laid out,
conditions
right?
is that I would really, what I would need to be able to answer that question is that this wasn't just a one-off. We've had 2 years of close to 50 kids in each year, like 100 kids have come in. People move into houses. Of course, this is how this happens. We know.
Okay.
I think that this is a 1 year, a one-off in terms of budget, unless I get another 50 kids. I think that's what's been very interesting in this the last couple of years is we figured, oh, they've all come back. 47 kids are like, oh, okay, COVID, they were homeschooled, they were this, they moved in, we knew. Then all of a sudden this year, more kids came. This is not school choice. Remember, we've reduced the number of school choice.
Explaining that, yeah.
Right. We've taken in more residents, and I'm like, could there be 3 years of this? I don't know, but that's a question. That's a question I don't know how to answer because census changes so much. But if we kept normal,
the things to look at, I think, so part of your answer is you're asking me the question. I can't answer it totally, but here are the things that are going to factor into it. So
exactly.
One of your points was, the five teachers trying to play the shell game with staffing those specific teachers. And that's what I'm looking at is that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up about, well, is your town growth going to continue? Because it looks like it is.
From all indications. So I know I see Adam's little hand, but up there on the screen. But to give you an understanding of like where it would be. So, okay, so we only have 4 teachers. So we go into next year and I'm only going to use this year's numbers. I'm not going to try to project. All I know is what I know.
Yeah.
You'd have a kindergarten class of 27. This would be average, right? First grade of 23. Okay. Second grade, 27, third grade, 29, and fourth grade, 32. I mean, that's just, now remember, we only have in the entire elementary of 600 and I think it's up to 54 kids, but when we did October 1, it was 644 kids, only 28 school choice kids. And quite frankly, I think 11 of them are tuitioned in at the pre-K level, which are not really school choice. They just tuition in. They're not just going to matriculate into kindergarten, first grade. So you're really only talking about 18 or so school choice kids out of that entire 644 kids. So and thank you for putting it a lot more eloquently than I could, Mr. Curry, is that I would say, yeah, this would be a great base. I don't know how many kids are moving in every year. And these are, again, without school choice even being factored in.
Right.
Adam, I see your hand. I see your hand is up, Adam. Go ahead.
The budget you have in front of you is based off the NRSD minimum number. So we're in a deficit with the minimum, the 300 to 3775 number. Thursday of last week, I got the 810 number. And with this budget I have that I'm recommending, we're already looking at some cuts already. I kind of want to touch upon what Mike brought up because I think it's a pretty good question. You see the state aid for the district went up $1.665 million. But when that state aid goes up the way it's going, I have to put my municipal manager hat on and kind of look at it. It increases the town's minimum as well. So let's say this new governor seems to be pro-education and next fiscal year increases it, let's say around the same percentage, that's going to increase the minimum even higher. So how does the town sustain that? That's the challenge. I've already spoken to Representative Zlotnick on this because when the state aid goes up, the town's minimum required contribution goes up as well. It's a serious concern because we're under Proposition 2.5 and sustaining, we want to support the district. We want to give them the resources they need. I was thrilled that Chris got $1.665 million in additional state aid. Once I started plugging my numbers in, the numbers just weren't working. It's a challenge, and it's not going to be just a challenge for fiscal year 24. I think it'll be a challenge next fiscal year as well. Those are just some concerns I wanted to share. I have to put, like I said, I have to put my municipal manager hat on. I know Chris has to represent the best interest of the schools, but we're kind of in a position here where it's he has to go with his school committee's number, and that number just doesn't work. I'm going to be realistic here, and I don't want to get into any further detail than that.
Yep. Thank you for that.
I think the plan would have worked. So, let's go back. The plan was that if we stopped taking school choice students at that time, but the number of school choice students that we had, especially at the elementary, if you were just to simply just say, you subtracted them. Now you can't do that. Let me just be clear. But through over time, I think the plan would have, I mean this, we looked at this. I think it would have worked. They'd have been high, but they'd have worked. Especially, we thought we were having a declining in just overall declining enrollment too. So at the same time, we had this slightly declining enrollment in terms of, residents. Okay. And so then you decline, you decrease your number of school choice students. At the same time, when we factor those things in, we go, you know what? I think the plan works, meaning we asked for $1 million again, back in FY20, right? We asked for all this money, but maybe we wouldn't need it because those teachers wouldn't be quote unquote needed because the numbers would then balance out to make, adequate class sizes.
Right.
I think it would have worked. I do, right? Without knowing anything else other than trying to put myself back in that time frame.
Yeah.
The problem is that I think that we know this, when parents move in, they like to tell you why they're here and they like to tell you why they love it here. I cannot tell you how many, and I'm sure you know all of this. People go, I'm working, I work in Boston and not anymore because I'm now online, or I'm making my husband commute because it's wonderful out here. We've got 3 times the space that we had in an apartment. We would hear all these stories and they'd come in with 2 and 3 kids, which is fantastic. I think it would have worked. I think it would have worked. Unfortunately, we didn't think that we were going to increase this many kids. I'm going to assume, obviously they're residents. They live here and mostly in Templeton.
Mm.
So I don't think it was hard to take. Yeah. But it was I think it would have worked if we just didn't increase by this much. And I don't think anyone saw that coming. I don't know.
I
Maybe
did.
You did.
I've been asked to plan, and I know that the elementary school can only operate at 90%. How's the capacity now?
Capacity is okay as right now, because we now have every room filled, right? Which is, it's supposed to be. Every room is supposed to be used. So they are. We have a full day pre-K, which is a big deal. It's a big step. But quite honestly, we think that we could have another full day pre-K if we had the space and we had the gumption to do so. By the way, that's completely funded by tuition, right? They tuition in.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that
That's
self-sufficient or is
self-sufficient,
there
yes,
an
for the
offset?
most part, and depending, but in the other scenario, you go to 4 teachers per, right? You go 4 teachers, you're gonna have 5 empty classrooms in a brand new school building, which we had before. And everybody, if you remember, that was a point of contention in some circles, that the building would be empty, and there'd be 5 empty rooms, but these rooms would be packed with whatever number it is per.
Terry, I know you've brought it up a couple of times through that, and I definitely, earlier, just like 20 minutes earlier, I thought the same thing. We can't hang a shingle on, the border of town to say Templeton's closed for business. I think we have to be smart about how we grow. I think fortunately, we've put ourselves in a better financial position, and I do mean position, like where we sit fiscally, to be able to handle these kinds of challenges. Does that make sense? I really want to reiterate it. We're not having this discussion, using the Wayback Machine. We're not having this budget discussion in 2014, where we would have no room to move at all, nothing. We had the shirt on our backs back then. Maybe we are in a better position to be able to handle these challenges, I think, now. So you don't have to hang a shingle out on the front of town saying we're closed for business, no more
Well,
kids.
it's not like we're closed for business. We want business.
No, you just have
We're
to be-
open for business. We just don't want too many more kids until we get the business. We're not keeping up with there's always a deficit in police, a deficit at DPW.
Sure there is.
And I don't know, I know Mr. Kaplis, when he was the chairman of the board, he thought Templeton would be in good shape with an extra, $1 million at the time. But I'm not sure what you're projecting now, what we would need compared to when you were chair.
Probably about 2.5 million.
More.
Or 2.5 million. Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
From the business standpoint, obviously with and the insurance rates at 13% and your other rates such as electric, sewer, water, all that stuff, has that been looked at as well?
We have, and I'm going to let Anne Marie talk a little bit about what we're doing with insurance and how because you asked a great question during the school committee meeting. I don't think a lot of people heard it, because I think honestly there was something wrong with your mic. So honestly,
That was on purpose.
it was, but it was. I would say it was fortuitous.
It was very fortuitous. I like that word. Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
So when I put the budget together, I estimated a 10% increase in health insurance because we had a 9% increase last year.
Okay.
Well, our rates don't get voted until mid-February, which is kind of late for the whole budgeting process, but it's a 13.75% increase this year. Dr. Casvin and I have tried to we're looking at options. It probably isn't gonna happen for FY24, but we're looking for options for FY25 to see if we can do something differently, because our employees don't like those rates either.
Well, you have contracted, correct?
Yeah,
Are you in
yeah.
a contract with this company?
Yeah, we're part of a joint purchasing group.
Mhm.
So there's rules about how you can get in and out.
Mm.
So,
Ooh.
Well, that joint, I mean, that's like 300 some odd thousand of dollars increase.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And we attempted before to, again, a couple of years back, but it wasn't going to benefit the district. And then we started conversations with another group.
Yeah.
And in collaboration with some folks as well. And we're hopeful to see where that goes ultimately, but it has to match, of course, the contract that we're in as well.
Right, I'm sure you need more better with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my only question to that, and I think I know the answer. You don't have an exorbitant amount of claims on the insurance as the district,
Right.
but it's the entire collaborative and who you're in the joint purchasing agreement with.
yes.
Okay.
We found, quite frankly, we just requested that information. And the district itself has an excellent health, I'll call it a health record.
Our
So
claims are very favorable.
very favorable. And so we're very attractive to groups, quite frankly, because we're large-ish, depending, and we have a good claim record. So we're poised, right, in a very positive way, and we're looking to capitalize on that.
Just the contract we're in is what's making it tough.
Yeah.
That's great news. Thank
Yeah,
you for
it
that.
really is.
Mr. Chair, the percentage of for transportation rates of the state paid, did you get the percentage? I mean, I thought it looked like around 68%.
This percent on here is actually a little bit higher than the cherry sheet. Their cherry sheet calculated 75% reimbursement. I kind of think it's gonna be a little higher. So the number I put on the sheet represents 80%.
Okay, sorry.
As we've been told, we've been told that is the number that they are. I'll use the word planning to use the 80%. We'll see what happens. We always adjust that as we go. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a question through you, Mr. Chair, just a question regarding the school choice. I know that the plan has been right along as you've seen that kind of slow drop of enrollment. You've also been kind of slowly dropping the school choice enrollments as you go along too, to kind of keep everything balanced off. Has there been any thought of changing that plan moving forward as a result of what you're seeing in the enrollments coming in from the towns at this point?
Thank you for bringing that up. And the answer to that is yes. Because we have such a debt against school choice. Okay, right. We talked about the health insurance.
Yeah.
It becomes an unbelievable calculus, almost assignment to figure out just the right number to take without now taking anyone at the elementary school, without overwhelming the middle and high school. So my point is that we have to figure what that break even is, right? Or more than that, not just break even, more than that.
Mhm.
But what the problem is you never know what resident is going to decide to school choice out.
Right.
So, because you have of course, why would you? It's a parent's discretion.
Yeah.
And so it is an unbelievable task that we take every year. Quite frankly, if we had 5 teachers at every grade level at the elementary, we could take in a few elementary if the timing was right and it was all good, because we always have to keep that number unless we move the entire health insurance, expense over to the general fund. When I'm coy about when it was done, I'm only saying this because as a former business manager in another world, is that you never put a yearly expense or whatever into a revolving account. It's kind of like a golden rule, but you do what you have to do in order to balance. That's what I also know. So whatever was happening on at that time, you do whatever you need to do to, don't put your mortgage on a credit card. Well, if they're going to foreclose, what would you do? Right. So I'm not speaking ill of whomever was doing that. it was done and then it stayed there. And I think that ultimately became the bigger issue, because that would be where we would go in case there was an issue, an unexpected expense.
Here I have a.
But
I know there were two capital requests that you made, which we were not able to fund. And one was the varsity game field, the other was the roof, the middle high school. And I'm just wondering, if you have discussed with Representative Zlotnick the possibility of earmarking one of those expenses or other capital expenses.
Not neither of those. What we have presented, we had all the representatives out, including Senator Goby, to look at the wood chip boiler, because, and quite frankly, again, she's a busy lady. She didn't know that we had the wood boiler. We showed her, and we were upgrading our HVAC at the time, slowly using ESSER funds because we needed to do that. And in order to complete it, we were roughly 235,000, give or take, away from just completely overhauling that whole HVAC system, up at the middle and high school. So Representative Zlotnick went to bat for us. And he said, look, I don't know if I can get you that much. I said, listen, we're Narragansett. We'll take whatever money you give, and we'll just keep plodding away. I don't, whatever, 20 grand. Thank you. We're very appreciative. We'll do whatever you can. It didn't work out last year, but then I received, a text saying, hey, what was that number again? And so he'll try his best again. And I know he will. So we've asked him, not on those two projects. One, because the roof is so exorbitant that they're probably going to just say, they're going to kick it back and say, look, you got MSBA that you could go after, or at least offset cost. In the game field, we planned on taking that on as we came before this committee, maybe last month or the month before. The bleachers will come off our off our rolls, and we will just simply add the same amount to fix the game field. So to answer your question directly, no, not in those two, but we have on other capital projects that we would normally, or that we could possibly come to the towns for.
Thank you.
any other questions?
I don't.
Again, what did we learn from FY20? I always ended this the other day, is that no, I've learned a lot. John's laughing, but it's not funny. I learned a lot. First off, it was a lesson in humility. 1, 2, we listened very carefully to the things that I know that I was appropriately made fun of. I had a rant apparently, and I did. Because we listened to what people were complaining about. I listened to what the folks were complaining about when we were asking for the exorbitant amount of money when we did. And we've been able to address many of those things, as I said, last school committee meeting, without costing either town a dime. Vocationally, we're working with Monty Tech. And I heard he said some not so nice things about me. We try to get each other back every once in a great while. Brian's a great guy.
You guys reading about?
But we're working collaboratively through a grant that we hope that's going to put more kids into Monty Tech, but keep them as Monty Tech kids. I mean Monty Tech, keep them Narragansett kids and give them skills. We have college, we're early college free. We have, again, Project Lead the Way with STEM. All of those things were brought up in one way or another in those various meetings. And so when we present a budget like this, when we create the budget, we do it in stages, knowing fully well that we might have to, never say retreat, but it's tactfully retrograde, I believe. But we will do what we need to do, and we will still educate the kids, the students of Narragansett as well as we do now. We're going to need some help eventually. We need it now, but especially these numbers keep increasing, which I think is a great thing, by the way. Congratulations. When did you think this was going to happen? When you were trying to get when we're all trying to get a bond rating, right? We're trying to get residents to move in here. I really do see this as a wonderful, wonderful thing that a lot of hard work has gone into, and I think it's starting to happen. And so the school is the lucky recipient of those kids. And I mean that. But that's all I
Mr. Chair,
have.
I have one final question. Dr. Kaiser,
Yes.
well, obviously, we had 2 snow days. So when's the end of school this year? June what?
26.
If you heard from I was told,
I'm just asking the question.
people have been,
No further snow days.
people let me know. that
Cost
I
you
sounded-
another
I
800.
sounded. Did I say 13%? It's not funny. No,
Yes, man, I'll help you out. The final day is gonna be June 30th.
don't say that. Please don't say that. I'm here anyway. It's the kids. We're trying to keep them.
But it's by legislation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Buddy. Oh, my gosh. Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I emailed you guys about the fight sign.
I'm already on it.
You have to perform it on your channel.
For the record, I had to go into the city clerk's office in Gardner. And I had a Narragansett jacket on and she started to sing the fight song because she was a proud alum. And she sang the entire song.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Take care. Thanks, Doctor.
Thank
you.
Any final thoughts?
Oh, exciting.
It was.
Information.
My only final thought on this,
Follow up in Q&A.
is some concern for the Narragansett budget, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I believe, Mr. Lamontagne, you're still on with us.
Adam?
I am, I'm listening to you.
Okay. I believe you said that with the numbers that they're proposing, we're in Prop 2.5 range.
Our 2.5% increase going into fiscal year 24 is 290,778. So even with the minimum, with their minimum, we're required to give them by law. It still takes all of our 2.5%.
Which means we're probably gonna have to look at a 2.5 vote. I'm concerned about that passing. I would love to give Narragansett Regional School District every time that they want, because I'm a firm believer that the school system is the key to a strong and thriving community, and I believe that the kids deserve the funding, 100%. I have 2 kids in the system. But I just have grave concerns that if we're gonna go to a 2.5 vote, that we're gonna have a problem. And I'm not just us. Our counterparts in Templeton are probably, I look at numbers because their percent increase is a lot higher than ours. They're at 11, they're almost 12% increase over last year, as opposed to our paltry 4% increase over last year in comparison. I would expect they're gonna have to go to a 2.5 vote, and I would expect that they're gonna have these same, if not bigger problems, passing a Prop 2.5 override there as well. So that's the biggest concern that I have right now, is that we're on our way to a Prop 2.5 override. And I'm concerned it's not just going to be us who is not going to pass it. I'm concerned it's going to be, I'm concerned that it's going to be Phillipston that's also not going to pass it. We're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. Just my thoughts, and God knows, I hope that I'm completely wrong. But
I appreciate the input, and that is a good point.
So, I mean, I don't want to get into that. I was clearing stalls today, and we got 2-3 feet of snow. And to go out to my manure pile, you get one track, right? And you got to push that wheelbarrow along the one track. And to use that as the manure metaphor. If we say that, and we say that's the only solution to it, I mean, they vote, right? They voted, they gave their number.
Yep.
They said 810. Adam said, I can do 303. He's on. We're $500,000 off. And it took us, how many meetings do we have? Was it 4 or 5, including the original? I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that either.
But I think that we need to kind of play out some scenarios and start doing some horse trading So we don't go down that road and say, sorry, taxpayers,
Yeah,
we're gonna throw it over the fence and you're gonna have to decide.
Right.
You know, they're gonna say, well, what have you done to
is
that
this a
point?
situation where we could possibly use some of our emergency fund in order to supplement that? If
But not,
possible? Not all of it, but.
right, and I agree, you know, because at that point, we're shaving the beam,
Right,
you know,
Yeah.
we're,
100%. Yeah.
we wind up taking a look and say, well, you got 193 left in E&D. If we got to come to that number, whatever that we get them to agree to, I say them, town
Right.
meeting,
Right, yeah,
Right?
we've got whatever
to
we get,
basically
have to get
say,
past town meeting.
yeah. I just don't, I don't want to get stuck on that route to say the taxpayers are gonna
No.
have to, you know, it's gonna come out of their hide.
Oh, and I agree. I just wanted to make sure that concern should be at the top of our heads. too.
It should.
Yeah,
It's kind of the
Quite a
primary.
difference.
It is.
I think, Mike, I think you hit the head with the crystal ball analogy. I think, you know, 'cause it seems like we've been putting Band-Aids on for so many years. You know, that, and it's still bleeding.
Yeah, it's so not sustainable what they've been
Right.
giving us.
No, it's not.
No, their curveballs are there too.
Right.
He's just trying to say, can you get us to some stability
right.
Right.
rather than these giant mood swings?
Yeah.
I get the ESSER part. I get, you know, Chris did a great job. Dr. C did a great job explaining that, to be able to say, we got to figure out between the lines where they can build some resiliency. Oh, sorry.
That just went up. I just wanted.
Oh, okay, did it.
Adam, go ahead.
I thought I heard Dr. Casabian say he was going to go back to the district. Did I hear him incorrectly?
I don't think you heard him incorrectly, because I remembered that point when he alluded to, he knew what the number was walking into that meeting.
Mm.
And that he understood is Ajita a word?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other question that I would ask Dr. Casavan too is that of the thing that the committee voted for, that's the 24,789, whatever that number was, basically the laundry list. Can any of that be delayed and maybe broken up over the next couple of years to help blunt the cost effect instead of doing all of it for fiscal year 2024?
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe some of it can be delayed to 2025 and then another, some of it be delayed to 2026, so that eventually you get the full package. But break it up a little bit so that the brunt of it is not being inflicted upon one fiscal year for the school system.
Just like anything in a budget, I think if there's a plan in place, and there's a financial plan in place, of a financial growth plan in place. For a school, for our partners, the school district, who are our partners, there should be a growth plan in place. And just going year by year, looking at what we have in Chapter 70, look, we have in Chapter 74, look what we have in E&D, look what we have in, Medicare. There should be, and I know we always do, because Adam's gonna say, well, we have like 2.5%, but that's what we typically fund by, that's 2.5%. I'm like, and I get that, but we're at that point right now where I think we need to start looking at his list. I hate using the word delay, but I know what you mean.
No.
But if there's a plan in place to grow that
Right.
and financially grow that with our partners, I think that'd be a better plan.
That made sense. We know they're never gonna meet a 3 or
No.
4 number.
No.
I would love it if they walked in here. I know Adam would love it if they basically said, oh, what was your growth? 3. Oh, so is ours.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
That will never happen.
No,
It'll
Yeah.
never happen.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. for-
I'll use your big semantics word. We won't call it the delay. We'll call it a phase in.
That's a much better term. No, I agree with that. I 100%
Phase in
agree. Much better term.
resiliency. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
You have to start thinking that way.
Yep.
And as a manager, as Adam, and as good as he is, I think he can come up with, working with Dr. Casvan with a phase-in plan, like, okay, we know 2.5% is never gonna be the number.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so even thinking that, I mean, that's not gonna be helpful for any of
Yeah.
us.
and it's chess, not checkers, at this
Yep.
point.
100%.
So
Excellent.
And thank you for indulging my comments as well, because I know that's,
It was a little rude, it's okay.
it wasn't intentional. It wasn't intentional.
Any further thoughts, Kay?
Feel good.
Our next meeting is next week.
Our next meeting is next week. Yep.
On Saturday.
You guys off next week?
Our next meeting is the 28th, 29th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we're all
but-
back here.
We're all here on
Saturday.
Wednesday.
We're all back here
for a big-
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday, okay, everybody's.
Saturday.
messing up.
8 o'clock.
Forgot about that.
You're not gonna be here?
8 AM.
8:30 is.
6:30 here.
8:30 here.
Noel's bringing the donuts.
Yes, Noel's bringing.
Croissants.
And the croissants, yeah.
Homemade.
What candle?
So before you do yours, I can take a motion to adjourn the
So
advisory committee. I have a motion, second. Second. Excellent. So how do you say?
yes.
How you say?
Yes.
And I say yes as well. We are adjourned.
I would entertain a motion, we adjourn the select board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion duly made and seconded. How do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
I vote yes as well.